I was standing ankle-deep in broken glass when he told me to remember my place. That was the moment I realized the estate didn't need defending, it needed protection from him. The glass had been part of a stained panel commissioned in 1847, one of 12 that lined the northern gallery. Julian Hawthorne III had driven a maintenance cart directly through the corridor at speed, laughing with someone on his phone, and never looked back. I stood there with a broom and dustpan, carefully collecting pieces of irreplaceable history, while he shouted at someone in the foyer about wine temperatures. I didn't speak. I photographed the damage from 4 angles, logged the incident in my records, and continued my work. If you enjoy stories like this, the kind where silence becomes a weapon and patience pays in full, then you already understand what I was building in that moment, even if I didn't yet. My name is Rebecca Ward. For 11 years, I served as co-trustee and operational steward of the Hawthorne Preservation Trust, a position that sounds impressive on paper and means nothing to people who've never read a trust document. To visitors, to vendors, to Julian himself, I was staff. I was the woman who coordinated the gardeners, who ensured the gates were locked, who knew where every key was kept. I wore plain clothes, arrived early, left late, and my name appeared on exactly 0 plaques. But the trust documents told a different story. I held equal legal authority with the family heir. I had veto power over any structural changes, financial withdrawals above a certain threshold, and personnel decisions. The estate wasn't his to do with as he pleased. It was a preserved historical entity, protected under a legacy stewardship charter that his great-grandfather had signed willingly, proudly, as an act of legacy. Julian had been gone for 8 years. College, then Europe, then what his mother delicately called finding himself. I'd met him once before he left, a polite teenager who nodded when his father explained my role. When his father passed away 2 years ago, Julian stayed abroad. When his mother passed 6 months after that, he sent flowers and a lawyer. Now he was back. He arrived on a Thursday in early September, driving a car too fast up the gravel lane, music throbbing through closed windows. I was trimming the hedge line near the main entrance. He didn't stop. Didn't wave. Didn't acknowledge me at all. I learned he'd arrived only when I returned to the estate office and found the door open, my files scattered across the desk, my computer screen still glowing. "Hello?" I called, stepping inside carefully. Julian emerged from the back room, holding a bottle of scotch from the locked cabinet. He smiled, easy and warm. "You must be Rebecca. Mom mentioned you." "She did," I said. "Welcome home." "Thanks. I'm just getting reacquainted with the place. Settling in." He poured himself a drink, then gestured vaguely at the office. "I'll need access to all the estate files. Financial records, staff lists, security codes. The whole picture." "Of course," I said. "I'll prepare a full briefing. It's a complex operation, so it's best if we sit down together." "Just send it over," he said, waving his hand. "I'll review it when I have time. Some of it requires dual authorization. That's part of the trust structure." He looked at me then, really looked at me, with a kind of bemused patience. "Rebecca, I appreciate everything you've done here. Really. But I'm the owner now. Let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be." I smiled politely. "Of course. I'll send over what I can." He nodded, drained his glass, and walked out, leaving the cabinet open and the bottle on my desk. I locked the cabinet. I filed the paperwork. And I started a new document on my personal server titled Transition Log. The first entry was simple. September 12, J. Hawthorne requests full access without trust review. Explained dual authorization requirement. Dismissed without acknowledgement. Small things at first. He parked his car on the heritage lawn, despite signs marking it as a protected green space. I left a polite note on his windshield. The next day, he parked there again. He hired a landscaping crew without consulting me and instructed them to remove a section of the old stone wall bordering the east garden. I arrived that morning to find two men with sledgehammers, already mid-swing. "Stop," I said, stepping between them and the wall. The older man lowered his hammer. "We've got a work order, ma'am." "From whom?" "Mr. Hawthorne. I'm the estate steward. No structural changes happen without my review." The man glanced at his partner. "He said you'd say that." "He told us to go ahead anyway." I pulled out my phone and called Julian. He answered on the fourth ring, sounding irritated. "What? You've hired contractors to remove part of the east wall?" "Yeah. It's ugly and it's falling apart. It's a historic boundary marker. Removing it violates the preservation charter." He sighed, long and theatrical. "Rebecca, I appreciate your dedication, but I'm not keeping a pile of rocks because my great-great whoever thought it was important. It's my estate. It's the trust's estate," I said quietly. "And I'm asking you to halt the work until we can review it together." Silence. Then, almost amused, "You're asking me?" "Yes." "Fine. I'll halt the work. For now." He hung up. I turned to the contractors. "I'm sorry for the confusion. This project is postponed." They packed up, annoyed but professional. I took photographs of the wall, intact and undisturbed. I updated my log. September 19th, unauthorized contractor work ordered. Historic structure at risk. Work halted after direct intervention. That night, Julian sent an email to the entire estate staff. It was brief. "Going forward, all operational decisions will be approved by me directly. Please route requests through my assistant, to be hired soon. Thank you for your cooperation. J. Hawthorne 3." I wasn't copied. I replied privately. "Julian, as co-trustee, I'll need to be included in any communications that affect estate governance. This ensures we're aligned with trust requirements. Happy to discuss. Rebecca." He didn't respond. The next day, I found out he'd fired Walter. Walter had worked at Hawthorne for 23 years. He was the head groundskeeper, a quiet man in his 60s who knew every tree, every pipe, every inch of soil. He'd taught me half of what I knew about the land. I found him in the equipment shed, packing his tools into a worn duffel bag. "Walter?" He looked up, his face carefully neutral. "Miss Rebecca. What's going on?" "Mr. Hawthorne let me go this morning." My chest tightened. "Why?" "Said he's bringing in a property management company. Modernizing operations." He zipped the bag slowly. "It's all right. I'm old enough to retire anyway." "Did he offer severance?" Walter shook his head. "He can't do this," I said. "You're protected under long-term employment clauses. You're entitled to notice, compensation." He said I'm an at-will employee. Said I could leave quietly or make it difficult. Walter smiled faintly. "I don't want trouble, Miss Rebecca. This isn't right." "Maybe not. But I'm tired." He picked up his bag. "Take care of this place. It's worth fighting for." He walked out, and I stood there in the smell of cut grass and motor oil, feeling something harden inside me. I went directly to the main house. Julian was in the library, feet up on an ottoman, scrolling through his phone. "We need to talk," I said. He didn't look up. "Busy. You fired Walter without severance or notice. That violates his employment contract and the trust's staff protection agreements." Now he looked up, eyebrows raised. "Staff protection agreements?" "Yes. Any employee with more than 10 years of service is entitled to." "Rebecca." He set his phone down. "I don't know how things worked when my parents were alive, but I'm streamlining. Walter's a nice guy, but he's old, he's slow, and I don't need him." "You don't have unilateral authority to." "I absolutely do." He stood, walking toward me with that same easy smile. "I'm the heir. This is my estate. You manage operations, and I appreciate that, but you don't make personnel decisions. The trust documents say otherwise. His smile faded, just slightly. Are you really going to fight me on this? I'm going to uphold the agreement your family signed. He studied me for a long moment, then laughed softly. You know what? Fine. Reinstate Walter if it makes you feel better. But going forward, run these things by me first. I don't like surprises. Neither do I. He turned back to his phone, dismissing me without another word. I called Walter that evening. He cried when I told him he still had a job. I updated my log. September 24th, unlawful termination attempted. Employee reinstated through trust authority. J. Hawthorne warned. But I knew, even then, that I wasn't winning. I was just slowing the inevitable. Julian didn't speak to me for a week after Walter returned. He communicated through terse emails, usually sent after midnight, instructions that bypassed me entirely. He hired an assistant, a nervous young man named Brandon who apologized constantly and clearly had no idea what the trust was or why I kept appearing in meetings uninvited. I'm not uninvited, I told Brandon one morning, after he'd tried to block me from entering a contractor meeting. I'm legally required to be here. Brandon flushed. Mr. Hawthorne said he wanted to streamline the approval process. The approval process requires 2 signatures. Mine and his. He didn't mention that. I'm sure he didn't. I walked past him into the meeting. Julian barely glanced at me. He was presenting a renovation plan to a design team, a plan that involved gutting the southern wing, removing original woodwork, and installing what he called modern amenities. The drawing showed glass walls, floating staircases, and a rooftop deck. I waited until he finished. This violates the preservation charter in at least 9 places, I said calmly. The lead designer looked uncomfortable. Julian smiled. Rebecca, I appreciate your input, but we're just brainstorming here. This isn't brainstorming. You've given them measurements. You've discussed budgets. It's preliminary. It's prohibited. I placed a copy of the charter on the table. Section 4, subsection C. No structural alterations that compromise historical integrity. Section 7, subsection A. No modifications to load-bearing elements without joint trustee approval. Section 12-inch. Okay. Julian held up a hand, still smiling, but his jaw was tight. I get it. You've read the charter. I helped write the compliance updates. The room went very quiet. Julian stood. Gentlemen, let's take a break. Rebecca and I need to chat. The design team filed out quickly. Brandon hesitated, then followed. Julian closed the door. Let me be very clear, he said, his voice low and even. I don't know what kind of relationship you had with my parents, but they're gone. This is my estate now. My decisions. My legacy. Your legacy is bound by the charter your great-grandfather created. A charter I can challenge. You can try. It will take years, cost a fortune, and you'll lose. He stepped closer. You're awfully confident for someone whose job depends on my goodwill. My job doesn't depend on your goodwill. It depends on a legal document. Documents can be renegotiated. Not this one. He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than arrogance in his eyes. I saw anger. Real, simmering anger. You're making this very difficult, he said quietly. I'm doing my job. No. You're trying to control something that isn't yours. I'm protecting something that belongs to more than just you. He laughed, sharp and bitter. You sound like my mother. She trusted me. She pitied you. He said it softly, almost gently, and it landed like a blade. She felt sorry for you. The woman with no family, no life outside this place. She gave you a title so you'd feel important. I didn't respond. I didn't move. He picked up his phone. This meeting is over. I'll proceed with the renovations through an expedited review process. If you want to fight it, hire a lawyer. I already have one. He looked at me, something shifting in his expression. Of course you do. I left without another word. That night, I sat in my small cottage at the edge of the estate grounds and reviewed every document, every clause, every protection I'd spent years building into the trust framework. I made copies. I sent encrypted files to my attorney. I prepared for war. But I didn't want war. I wanted him to stop. The breaking point came 3 weeks later, at the annual Heritage Society dinner. It was a fundraising event held at the estate every October, a tradition spanning 4 decades. Local historians, donors, preservationists, people who cared about the work we did. Julian insisted on hosting. I tried to coordinate with him. I sent agendas, guest lists, vendor contacts. He ignored all of it and hired his own event planner, a woman named Simone who treated the estate like a rental venue. The night of the event, I arrived early to find the northern gallery where the stained glass had been, where I'd swept up broken pieces converted into a cocktail lounge. Modern furniture. LED uplighting. A DJ booth. I found Julian near the bar, laughing with a group of guests I didn't recognize. Julian, I said quietly. Can I speak with you? Kind of busy, Rebecca. It's important. He excused himself, still smiling, and walked with me to a quieter corner. This isn't the Heritage Society, I said. You invited different people. I invited interesting people. The society crowd is ancient and boring. They're donors. They fund the preservation work. I'll fund the preservation work. I don't need their money. This event has a purpose. It's not a party. It's my house. I'll throw whatever kind of event I want. He started to walk away. I caught his arm. Julian. Please. Just this once, can you respect what this place means? He looked down at my hand on his sleeve, then up at my face. His expression was unreadable. You really don't get it, do you? He said softly. You think you're protecting something sacred. But you're just clinging to the past because you don't have a future. He pulled his arm free and walked back to his guests. I stood there, surrounded by strangers and flashing lights, and felt something inside me go still. Not anger. Not hurt. Just clarity. I left the event early. I went back to my cottage. I opened my laptop and sent a single email to the Trust's legal counsel and the board of directors. Request for emergency governance review. Multiple charter violations documented. Immediate intervention required. I attached 40 pages of logs, photographs, emails, and recorded conversations. Then I went to bed. The next morning, Julian was waiting for me outside the estate office. His face was flushed, his hands shaking slightly. What the hell did you do? He said. I filed a report. You went to the board? Behind my back? I went to the board because you refused every attempt at resolution. You blindsided me. I warned you. Repeatedly. He stepped closer, his voice rising. Do you have any idea what you've done? They're talking about a review. A probationary period. They want to limit my access to estate funds. That's standard procedure when violations are flagged. Standard procedure? Rebecca, this is my inheritance. You're trying to take it from me. I'm trying to save it from you. He stared at me, breathing hard. For a moment, I thought he might shout. Might push me. Might do something reckless and irreversible. Instead, he smiled. It was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. You've made a mistake, he said quietly. A really, really big mistake. He walked away. I updated my log. October 18th, governance review initiated. Subject notified. Hostility confirmed. That afternoon, I received an email from Brandon. Julian wanted to hold a staff meeting. Attendance is mandatory. I arrived to find the entire household staff assembled in the main hall. Gardeners, cleaners, kitchen staff, Walter. Everyone looked uneasy. Julian stood at the front, arms crossed, looking calm and composed. "Thank you all for coming," he said warmly. "I want to address some rumors that have been circulating. There's been talk about management changes, about instability. I want to assure you that everything is fine." He glanced at me. "However, I do want to clarify the chain of command. Going forward, all staff report directly to me or to Brandon. If you have concerns, bring them to us. Not to anyone else." Silence. "I also want to address a sensitive issue." He paused, his expression turning regretful. "Rebecca has been a valued member of this estate for many years. But recently, she's overstepped her role. She's made decisions without consultation, created unnecessary conflict, and frankly, undermined the trust you all have in stable leadership." I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. "I want to be clear," Julian continued. "Rebecca is not your supervisor. She does not have hiring or firing authority. She is an administrative coordinator. Nothing more." Walter shifted uncomfortably. One of the younger staff members looked confused. Julian smiled. "I'm not letting her go. I'm just making sure we all understand who's in charge. Transparency is important." He dismissed everyone. They filed out slowly, avoiding my gaze. I stayed. Julian walked over, still smiling. "You wanted a public conversation. There it is." "That was a lie," I said quietly. "Every word." "Was it? Or is it just a different version of the truth? You humiliated me in front of people I've worked with for years. You tried to destroy me in front of the board." He leaned in, his voice soft and venomous. "Remember your place, Rebecca. You're not family. You're not irreplaceable. You're staff. And staff can be replaced." He walked away, leaving me standing alone in the empty hall. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I went back to my cottage, opened my files, and made one final entry in my log. October 19th, public humiliation. Professional credibility attacked. Psychological boundary crossed. The subject has been warned repeatedly. The subject has rejected all corrective guidance. The subject has demonstrated a sustained pattern of harmful behavior. I am no longer attempting resolution. I am activating enforcement. I closed the document. And I began to dismantle his world. The board convened on a Tuesday morning in late October. I was not invited to attend, but I didn't need to be. I'd already submitted everything they required, documentation so thorough, so meticulously organized, that there was no room for interpretation. Julian's violations weren't ambiguous. They were factual, time-stamped, and corroborated by third-party witnesses. I spent that morning in the garden, deadheading roses near the east wall. The wall Julian had tried to destroy. It stood intact, weathered stone warm under the autumn sun, exactly as it had for 170 years. My phone buzzed once. A message from the trust's lead counsel. The board has reviewed materials. The emergency meeting concluded. Enforcement measures approved. Expect formal notification by the end of day. I put my phone away and continued pruning. Julian found out at 3:47 p.m. I know because that's when I heard him shouting from inside the main house, his voice echoing through the open windows. I didn't go inside. I stayed in the garden, shears in hand, working steadily through the flower bed. At 4:15, Brandon appeared on the terrace, pale and stammering. "Rebecca, Mr. Hawthorne wants to see you." Immediately. "I'm finishing up here." He's very upset." "I imagine he is. Brandon hesitated, then fled back inside. I took my time. I cleaned my tools. I washed my hands at the outdoor spigot. I walked slowly across the lawn, through the side entrance, and into the estate office. Julian was there, pacing, a letter clutched in his hand. His face was blotchy, his hair disheveled. He looked like he hadn't slept. "What did you do?" he said, his voice hoarse. "I filed a compliance report. They froze my accounts." "My accounts, Rebecca. I can't access estate funds. I can't pay contractors. I can't." He stopped, breathing hard. "They're treating me like a criminal. They're treating you like someone who violated a legal agreement. I'm the heir. You're a beneficiary under conditional terms. You broke those terms." He stared at me, his eyes wild. "You did this. You poisoned them against me. I documented your behavior. They made their own decision. Bullshit. You manipulated them. He crumpled the letter, threw it across the room. "Do you have any idea what this does to me? To my reputation? Do you have any idea what you did to Walter? To this estate? To everyone who trusted you to do the right thing? I was trying to improve this place. You were trying to own it. There's a difference." He stepped toward me, his fists clenched. "You self-righteous," he stopped himself, visibly shaking. "You think you've won. You think you've beaten me. I think you beat yourself." His face twisted. "I'm not done. I'll appeal. I'll sue the board. I'll challenge every clause in that goddamn charter until—" "You'll lose," I said quietly. "You'll spend years in court, drain what's left of your access to funds, and you'll still lose. Because the law is clear, the documentation is irrefutable, and you've demonstrated repeatedly that you're incapable of responsible stewardship." He stared at me, breathing hard. "Who the hell do you think you are? I'm the person your great-grandfather trusted to prevent exactly this." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Julian laughed. It was a broken, bitter sound. "You know what the saddest part is?" he said. "You actually think you matter. You think this place needs you. But the only reason you have any power at all is because my family felt sorry for you. You're not special, Rebecca. You're just persistent." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm still here." "And you're not." His expression went blank. "What?" I picked up a second letter from my desk, one that had arrived an hour earlier, and handed it to him. He opened it slowly. I watched his face change as he read. Watched the color drain. I watched his hands start to shake. "They're removing me from the estate? Temporarily. Until you complete a stewardship education program and demonstrate sustained compliance with trust requirements." "Where am I supposed to go?" "The trust is providing accommodations in the guest house on the north property. You'll retain a living stipend, access to legal counsel, and the opportunity to reapply for full residency after a minimum of 18 months. 18 months? That's the minimum. It could be longer, depending on your progress." He looked up at me, his eyes wet. "You're kicking me out of my own home. I'm enforcing the terms your family agreed to. The board made this decision. Not me. You wanted this. I wanted you to stop." My voice was steady, emotionless. "You didn't. So now the structure does what you refused to do. It protects itself." He sank into a chair, still holding the letter. "I can't believe this." "Believe it." He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw something other than arrogance or anger. I saw fear. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "Now you leave. You have 72 hours to relocate to the guest house. After that, estate security will enforce the board's decision." "And you? You just stay?" "I will continue my work." He shook his head slowly. "You've destroyed me." "No, Julian. You destroyed yourself. I just refused to help you do it to everyone else. He stood, unsteady, and walked toward the door. He paused at the threshold, his back to me. I hope it was worth it, he said softly. It wasn't about worth. It was about responsibility. He left without another word. I sat down at my desk and logged the final entry. October 22nd. Board enforcement enacted. Subject removed from primary residence. Trust protections activated. Estate secured. I closed the file. I took a breath. And for the first time in months, the office felt quiet. Julian moved out 2 days later. I watched from a distance as he loaded boxes into his car, his movements slow and mechanical. Brandon helped him, neither of them speaking. When the car finally pulled away, gravel crunching under the tires, Walter appeared beside me. He's really gone, Walter said. For now. You think he'll come back? Maybe. If he learns what he needs to learn. Walter was quiet for a moment. You did the right thing, Miss Rebecca. I did the necessary thing. I'm not sure it's the same. He nodded slowly. Still. Thank you. He walked back toward the gardens, and I stood there alone, watching the empty driveway. The estate felt different after Julian left. Quieter, but not peaceful. The staff moved carefully, uncertain of what came next. I held meetings, reassured people, and restored routines. Slowly, the tension began to ease. The board appointed an interim advisor, a retired conservationist named Dr. Iris Kemper, to work alongside me during the transition. She was sharp, efficient, and refreshingly uninterested in drama. You've done remarkable work, she told me during our first meeting. Most people in your position would have quit or escalated much sooner. I didn't want to escalate. I wanted him to understand. Some people can't be taught. They have to fail first. That's a hard way to learn. It's the only way some people learn. We worked together through the fall and into winter. Repairs were made. Staff morale improved. The Heritage Society returned for a quiet, dignified event in November, and several donors increased their contributions. I didn't hear from Julian for 3 months. Then, in early February, I received a letter. It was handwritten, 2 pages, careful and measured. Rebecca. I've spent the last few months in a place I didn't think I'd ever end up accountable. The trust required me to work with a mediator, to study the charter I ignored, to understand what stewardship actually means. I resisted at first. I was angry. I blamed you for everything. But the anger eventually ran out. And when it did, I had to face what was underneath it. I was entitled. I was careless. I treated people like obstacles and history like decoration. I don't know if I can undo the damage I caused, but I'm starting to understand why it mattered. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking to come back. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what you were trying to protect. And why do you have to stop me? I don't know what will happen next. Maybe I'll earn my way back. Maybe I won't. But if I do, I'll do it the right way. Thank you for not letting me destroy something that didn't belong to me. Julian. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to see if the words matched actions. 6 months later, Julian completed his stewardship program. The board approved supervised visits to the estate, short, structured, always with a chaperone. He was polite. He asked questions. He listened. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. But it was a start. I saw him once, briefly, during one of those visits. He was walking the grounds with Dr. Kemper, taking notes, asking about restoration techniques. When he saw me, he stopped. Rebecca. Julian. We stood there for a moment, the space between us filled with everything we didn't say. The east wall looks good, he said finally. It stood for a long time. It'll stand longer. He nodded. I'm glad you kept it. It was never mine to remove. He smiled faintly. I'm starting to understand that. He walked on, and I returned to my work. Some evenings, when the estate is quiet and the light slants gold across the lawn, I walk the grounds alone. I check the gates, inspect the gardens, and run my hands along the old stone walls. This place has survived wars, storms, generations of careless hands and careful ones. It will survive long after I'm gone. People think inheritance is a crown, a prize you receive and wear. But it's not. It's a responsibility. It's the weight of everything that came before and everything that comes after. Not everyone survives that weight. Not everyone should. I think about Julian sometimes. About whether he'll ever truly return. Whether he'll prove that people can change, or whether some lessons come too late. I don't know the answer. But I know this, the estate doesn't need him to survive. It never did. It needed someone willing to say no when no one else would. It needed boundaries, not bloodlines. And it needed someone to understand that real power isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand recognition. It simply remains. I lock the office door and walk back to my cottage as the sun sets, the sky burning orange and violet. Tomorrow, I'll wake early. I'll tend the gardens. I'll review the schedules. I'll do the quiet, invisible work that keeps this place alive. Some people think that's sad, a life without glory, without ownership, without a name on the deed. But they don't understand. This was never about me. And that's exactly why it worked. If you've ever had to stand your ground against someone who mistook silence for weakness, you already know how lonely that kind of strength can feel. You're not alone in that. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the fight itself, it's realizing that protecting what matters means letting someone else fall. If you've lived through something like this, or you're still in the middle of it, I'd really like to hear your story. The comments here are full of people who understand, and your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. There's an old truth worth remembering: real power doesn't shout. It simply remains. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. If this story meant something to you, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need it. This channel is built on stories like Rebecca's family's, betrayal, quiet reckonings, and the lessons we carry forward. Subscribe if you'd like more, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.